literally just this one letter change in one SNP has caused just all this havoc in me and my family. My question to my psychiatrist was, you're not telling me why I'm not making enough serotonin. Then that's where my investigation started.
In Season 1, Episode 4, we talked with Christian Bonanno about the effects of 5G and EMFs on the body. Today, we're going to take a look at his pivot into genetics, epigenetics, and nutrition. And I think what he's found is super important because it indicates how minute genetic variations can impact our metabolic pathways, which can produce significant physical and psychological effects. Luckily, this also means that certain dietary adjustments or supplements based on these genetics can provide benefit. I'll make sure to post some graphics on the YouTube episode and the AOA webpage so we can follow along. All right, let's fire this up and check in with Christian.
I guess the last podcast we were talking about EMFs and how I thought they were affecting me, and that was like the majority of the focus of it. I've realized since the last podcast that my genetics are responsible for the sensitivities I have to the environment. But not just the genetics and dietary factors that make me more sensitive to the environment. I have something called a CBS deficiency. It's a deficiency in an enzyme called cystathionine beta synthase. And I'm going to call it CBS for short from now on. What this does is it turns homocysteine into cysteine and eventually glutathione. Probably all heard about glutathione. So I have this one small change in this gene, in the CBS gene. And so the CBS gene is made up of a whole bunch of SNPs. SNPs is short for single nucleotide polymorphisms. And every gene has a bunch of SNPs, and changes in these SNPs change how the gene works. And some of them can just slow it down. Some can speed up the gene. It just depends. So many people have polymorphisms in this gene, but I have a mutation in this gene. And a mutation is much different than a polymorphism. Mutations occur in less than 1% of the population, while polymorphisms occur in greater than 1%. And mutations have more of a detrimental biological effect on people if they have them. The SNP, or this mutation I have in this gene, what happens is when the CBS enzyme needs vitamin B6 or a form of vitamin B6 as a cofactor. And the cofactor is called P5B. And what happens with my mutation is it changes the enzyme shape. So when I take B6, it will attach to the enzyme, but it attaches incorrectly. So it's almost like having kind of a broken lock. Like if you imagine, like, if you have an old door and it's really hard to get the key in, you have to struggle with it. Well, that's what happens with this enzyme. So even though I can take a lot of B6, only about half of the time or less, that enzyme will function correctly. Since this enzyme gets rid of homocysteine, I end up having high homocysteine. And so this is something we're probably going to talk to you in the future about, Thomas. Because you're going through the same thing right now with high homocysteine. High homocysteine levels are actually a lot more common, and they're caused by a number of different vitamin deficiencies. B6 is probably the biggest one, but B12, zinc, folate, all three of those can lead to high homocysteine. Why this is important for me is that the B6 deficiency, it doesn't just affect that enzyme. We have hundreds of enzymes, and most of them are called aminotransferases, and these control the breakdown of proteins in our bodies. So I get slowdowns in a gene called glutamate decarboxylase, which leads to a buildup of glutamate, and hence a lot of my anxiety disorders, my history of psychosis. Glutamate is a big one in this B6 deficiency. And so there's just like a whole series of effects. And I just understand now why it was so difficult for me to weed out what was going on with me because of this one change in the CBS enzyme. It led to a cascade of things that look like everything. I mean, they diagnosed me with lupus. They didn't diagnose me with it, but they thought I had lupus because I definitely had the signs of lupus. The immune disorders, they check my autoimmunes, everything's fine, and the immune deficiency, and they just never know what's going on, and it looks like everything, and they all just blamed it on my mental health because my predominant disabilities were my psychiatric ones. Literally just this one letter change in one SNP has caused just all this havoc in me and my family, because this was definitely passed down through my mother's side of the family.
The way I visualize this is like it's inputs and outputs, right? So it's these several, let's say, turning gears. And so it brings this one thing in, there's an input and it converts it and there's an output. And
correct.
So
it's a little factory. A little
tiny factory.
Little
nice.
Factories, yeah.
Okay. And so kind of what you're saying is that your genetics sort of don't have the right blueprint for one of those gears or a couple of those gears maybe. And so the gear doesn't really do the best job of converting these conversions. And so when the output has to function as an input for the next step of the pipeline, it's like either a surplus or a deficit. And then that has sort of can have a cascade of effects, basically.
Yes, exactly. What happens in my factory is I have really bad machinery, and it doesn't work right. So
it doesn't attach correctly, as you say, locking on there.
Yeah.
Let me pause to mention that I'm going to go ahead and post a 25-minute supplemental episode where Christian gives us a longer explanation of the technical details of this enzymatic pathway and the various effects it had on him. This includes how it relates to the EMF sensitivity that we discussed back in season 1. Check it out if you like the biochemistry of his investigations. Now, let's see what happened with it.
Since taking this high-dose B6, and I'm literally taking about 200 times the RDA, maybe more. It's hard to do because the form I'm taking is not listed in the RDA. So it's because I take P5P instead of taking most people take pyroxidine, but I take pyroxidol 5-phosphate. And so pyroxidine turns into pyroxidol 5-phosphate. And that's the coenzyme that's used in the body. So taking P5P saves the body a step of making B6. What just happened with the lowering of blood pressure, I've also had near elimination of, I'm going to say right now, a total elimination of my anxiety and panic.
Wow.
And my OCD as well. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell. I believe I'm feeling a recovery coming on, a stable one. But so yeah, I just found out a lot of interesting stuff. I don't know if you have any questions. I've been talking my head off, but
I have a ton. Yeah.
Go.
Well, first of all, congratulations to put in this much work and to find a good clutch of answers and leads and to follow through on it, man. That's like serious dedication. And
yeah,
a lot of people wouldn't do that and wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, I want to interject here just to say all of this was brought on by my nephew's suicide.
Oh, wow.
Because the mental health of my family goes back a way and it's all over. And once he died of suicide, I was like, there has to be something genetic going on. And that's when I got into all of it. So yeah, if it wasn't for that. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah. As long as I've known you, it's funny the progression going from what we started off in, like, which is not to throw these out, but it's just saying this was the starting point of like your own feelings of how good you felt in your body, your own stability of mood, took us into like spiritual practice, right? You said lots of meditation, and then eventually into the counseling side, psychology, therapeutic sessions. And, for as long as those lasted, and perhaps some good, but we started to notice, I remember 5-10 years ago when you were kind of getting into the switching gears a little bit, you have not separated the pursuit of truth from that of healing and medicine journey. And so it's like being open and willing to go down these different paths to see if it pans out, if it doesn't, all from actually a self-recognition of like, why is my life presenting this way with these range of emotions, these ups and downs that seem to be sometimes good and sometimes not? What the hell's going on there? And how easy it is just to say, oh, you're bipolar, conversation close, and we're done. Take this lithium and jam your neurotransmitters.
There's no cure, you'll never get better.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. Why would no one, people do now some, but like you were really my first exposure to a lot of this. What about the range of epigenetics, genetics, and nutrition, and that's like the innovation, not to mention these environmental factors. Just seeing this progression, and then finally, you also are really gifted at this, by the way. Like you can remember these processes and cycles and long multi-10 syllable enzymes and stuff, which
God bless Asperger's. If it wasn't for my Asperger's, I would have never gotten better, and that's the truth.
I suppose that could be, they need someone like you, to figure all this shit out. That's good. Well, the rest of us are lucky for your burden, but thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. And I think too, you bring up the spiritual, just to interject. Yeah, that's a huge environmental factor. Like, and in this, like too, like a lot of people, like when I talk about genes, they think I'm totally dismissing the spiritual or the communal, right? I'm not, like, because it's such an important factor. Like how stress itself alone, that changes your epigenetics. So I'm just as interested in that as I am in the nutrition side. Like they're just all environmental factors. So healing does incorporate the spiritual side, and it incorporates counseling 100%. Like I wouldn't have gotten to where I've gotten without all the counseling I had, because it helped me cope with my disorder, and it helped me disentangle it from what I thought was me.
That's a good point.
And so I realized I wasn't my disorder, but anyway.
So how do you discover this stuff? Kind of like, I know there's the motivation we talked about you have the willingness and the, interest, and the sort of dogged pursuit of it, which helps. But in the technical sense, what do you do, the blood test, or how did you go about kind of refining and discovering the particular SNPs and genes and recognizing how those?
Well, the blood tests were really important, and it's not even the bad blood tests. Even subtle changes in my blood test to me are important to see in people. Like I don't care if someone has I don't care if someone's white blood cells counts are outside of low, like if they're lower than the mean over extended period, that kind of tends to be the type of person. Like, and the same thing with thyroid. Like, so when I started looking at these things, I was like, well, my thyroid isn't super low, but it's low. And so I would look at my thyroid genes and look at what makes the thyroid function. And
I remember this being a big innovation that I thought was super important, because it's like, it's all in this bell curve, and you lop it off in the upper and lower 20% or something like that. Well, what if I'm like 22 percentile? It's not flagged, but like, you think that doesn't have an effect on the chain, the pipeline, the cascade of other things that like may also be not quite up to where they could be to feel optimal, For sure.
That's the problem.
That's great.
Yeah, you just hit on the exact problem with Western medicine. Like It doesn't care about people on the borderlines. No matter how sick you are, they can look at tests all day and tell you you're fine. When they know they don't know all the answers yet, and they know you're suffering, and they still don't care. So if you get lucky, you have a doctor like my hematologist who cared, and he said, no, you actually have high hemoglobin hematocrit, even though it's not marked as high in your tests. He's like, this is a disorder you have. Yeah. And so, the tests were a big part of it. Understanding my own reaction to things like food, environment, just having that self-awareness was huge. And that I credit a lot to the past meditations I've done that increase that awareness, probably to a detriment. But
you notice things that you might otherwise not notice or keep unconscious, in terms of what was affecting you like that.
I think it also allowed me to disassociate those things from me so I can examine them more. And not just like, well, I'm just grumpy. Well, maybe there's something more to it, than.
You're correct. This is huge. Like, that's almost the first step, like, oh, I'm just grumpy today. Oh, I'm just depressed. And, in my case, I need to be away from people for 5 days. You know what I mean? And that's as far as it goes. You might be able to say that, but like, no one ever thinks, do I have to be this way? Maybe there's some other factors like affecting the reasons I'm feeling like this. Maybe it's genetic, maybe it's nutritional, maybe it's and so it's being able to see those and then question them. Most of it goes unquestioned,
Yeah. Or it's based solely on psychology,
Correct. Yeah.
Like I'm in no way dismissing childhood trauma. And I think in a large way, it's something that precipitates a lot of these things, because I think childhood traumas lead to, when you have a big buildup of stress, you'll have to metabolize that stress, and metabolizing that stress takes enzymes. And I mean, literally, like cortisol is metabolized through enzymes, and adrenaline is metabolized through enzymes. I mean, my big thing was always having to metabolize adrenaline and epinephrine and dopamine and serotonin, like just because of the stress of my childhood, and that led to deficiencies. It's important. And again, another environmental factor, but again, it's nature and nurture. I will pound this into the ground, because I'm not one of these people that's going to say it's all genetics. I'm never going to say that. I'm never going to say it's all psychology. Now, it might be all genetics for some people, and it might be all nurture for some people. It might be all psychological for people, but I think those are the rare cases.
Yeah. And so basically coming back to the big picture innovations, it's like you finally reached a point where you're saying, yes, I've seen these things in myself. I've seen how they vary. I've seen different environments where I feel differently. Let me take a look at the genetic profile, which in your case, you got the whole sequence, right? You like, what would you even call that? I don't know the right words to use here.
Well, I didn't really get the whole, so it's the genome. So
the genome.
I had my genome run twice on 23andMe, which is not the complete genome. I tried to get the complete genome once, but the company literally went out of business before they got to my thing. Yeah. I don't know if I really needed to do it, but I still feel like I want to do it, but it's still kind of expensive. I think it's over $400. So, and I think there's other things I might want to do besides that, that would give me more benefit. But
right.
But so I have a lot of my genome, but it's not complete, and that posed a big problem. But anyway.
Okay. So you got this genome, and then there's other systems that help you evaluate it or interpret it, or do you really get into the GTCA codes of?
Oh, I get into that 100%. More than I should. I mean, there are a lot of tools. There's a tool called Prometheus that these people from Cambridge started, that you can upload your genome from all these companies into, and it will actually flag. And I did this with you actually, and we'll talk about that in the future. But it will flag genes that are known to, or SNPs that are known changes to cause or increase the risk of disorders. And that was really invaluable to me because that's where I actually found that I'm a biotinase deficiency carrier, which is important because if I have a child and someone else is a carrier, my kid will be born with biotinase deficiency.
Wow.
There's a 25% chance that the kid will be born with it.
So on the one hand, now you have your genetic.
So Promethease was big, but Promethease doesn't look at every SNP. And what I started realizing is that they do a great job, but they were missing a lot of things that could be detrimental to me. And that's when I can just look at the raw genome, and I'll send you a picture of the text file. Mm-hmm. It's literally just a text file I have with numbers, the chromosome location, and the alleles of that SNP.
Holy moly.
And they're all listed. It's a 15 megabyte text file. So
Woo.
It's huge. But I just how I discovered so about 2 months ago, I was like, I couldn't understand why my homocysteine was still high. So I was like, I got to look at this CBS gene I have more closely because everything else I'm doing is not lowering my homocysteine. And that's when I discovered something that was not in Promethease, but has 5 studies that they've done that show that this enzyme does not attach to the P5P correctly. So it was like, you could think of the Promethease as a summary, but if you really want to get into it, you have to really just start looking at. So if you think there's a problem with your gene, you need to look at that gene more closely to make sure there's not something really detrimental.
Absolutely.
And that involves going to the raw data. Yeah.
Okay. And then you were sort of cross-referencing this with your specific blood work panels and stuff. Like you had to have already flagged that your homocysteine was high, right? From blood work.
Yeah.
And then you start getting curious about that and cross-referencing it with genetics and the research.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a whole, process of PubMed and SciHub. I'll have to drop a link for that because SciHub is great because it's like a sort of like Pirate Bay for research papers.
Okay.
And most research papers you can't get a hand on.
Yeah.
So in the early, but in the early days when I lived in Chapel Hill, I used to go to the UNC Health Library. And the UNC Health Library, I have access to all these papers. So that's how I was able to do a lot of my early research was at the Health Sciences Library at UNC. I would go there and look up these papers, and that's before I had my genetics. But then later on, someone published this website that you can literally get almost any paper. The recent ones are more difficult, but you can get any paper past the paywalls. But so that was really invaluable. Literally, you can look up these SNP numbers. Their numbers, it's like RS15346, and you can put them into Google Scholar, and it will pull up studies to see if it's linked to anything.
I see. So there's sort of like, it's like those old paper maps that give you the quadrant. You go to quadrant A4, so you can go to this SNP, and copy paste it in and find papers about that one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'll show an example of my gene and how I found it. It's just amazing to me that this information is out there, but for some reason, people aren't putting it together. I don't know if it's effort. I don't know if it's this academic research is so slow. Like I've worked with these people.
I'm getting slower.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's not only slow, and we probably don't have enough people doing it, but it's slow because, the scientific process is rigorous. Now, what I'm doing is I'm living off of all that work, but what the problem is that people are not putting it together. Like
kind of meta research almost.
Yeah. So they're just looking at one gene or studying one enzyme. I think that's what my endocrinologist was impressed with, was how I was explaining how this CBS deficiency was causing my red blood cell issue, and my high hemoglobin and hematocrit. Because most people wouldn't think of that, because, well, you're either a hematologist and you just look at the genes around hematology, or you know about the CBS gene and you just look at that. So
it's like
putting them,
everyone's so far out into the very, very nuanced research domain that it's like almost impossible to come out and then reconnect that over here. You know, and then like your general practitioner is not going to do that. He's going to order or she's going to order a standard blood work, you know, not all these sort of like, there's like, I think that's one thing I didn't know. Actually, it's a huge piece. There's all kinds of blood work out there that you don't get normally. You know what I mean? Your normal stuff is just ticking the big ticket items. You know what I mean? And they're not out there to pick up on a lot of things, you know?
Yeah. No, it's true. But like, I have a good friend, known her for 25 years, and I have her genetics, and she was suffering from long-term depression. And when I looked at her genes, I saw some things, but one of the things I saw was, and this was about 3 or 4 years ago, that she probably had celiac disease. And just based on her symptoms and her fatigue and stuff, and some of other, like her anemia. And finally this year, she's got tested. She got an endoscopy, and guess what they discovered? She has celiac disease.
Wow.
So it's not like, but she would never have been tested for that unless she asked them. And she was getting so fed up not feeling well that she finally said, I want to be tested for celiac.
No kidding.
And she was tested positive for the antibodies, and then she had an endoscopy, which is where they go into her duodenum and they took out a piece, and they test her positive for celiac. So she was labeled as depressed, and she was on, and now trying to get off of so many psychiatric medications that it's so difficult to untangle, and it takes time, and
that is hard.
So, you
get so much inertia, not only from the system, but like how you yourself interpret it and tell people what your family thinks about you, what your psychologist and your general practitioner thinks. And so to extract out of that is very challenging.
Great point. Yeah, that's exactly it. So they changed my diagnosis 1,000 times. Well, very first it was, you have ADHD. Gave me Ritalin. It made me manic and crazy. And I said, oh, well, I guess you have bipolar since we made you manic giving you Ritalin. And so it was that. And then it was, well, you have schizoaffective disorder. And then they said, well, you know, you probably have like schizoaffective disorder and Asperger's. And that's kind of where they left it. They just said, okay, well, that's it. And so take medicine and go away.
Yep.
And that frustration in my nephew's suicide, I feel was, he was put on an ADHD medicine 2 weeks before his suicide.
Oh my God.
And I think I'm pretty certain it played a role in his behavior that led him to his, eventual suicide. And, so these these arbitrary, just saying someone is depressed does not get at the biological and environmental things that are causing that depression.
Or if they do, they're like, oh, take this, GABA reuptake inhibitor or something. Your neurotransmitters off. That's as far as we can see it.
Yeah. And listen, again, they're going back to your bell curves, since they'll work for,
right.
And I use work loosely.
Yeah. Functional, functional, and you can you can still go to work,
Yeah. Or, they work and then they stop working, but people just keep taking them because they think they're still working, but they just got used to their depression. There's so many complexities in these drugs, but
it's true.
But, let's say even though, I have no doubt that they really can, like the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, that they can help people tremendously. But my question to my psychiatrist was, you're not telling me why I'm not making enough serotonin.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that's where my investigations start. Like, well, so serotonin reuptake inhibitors can make me manic pretty quickly. So that was a big curiosity for me. Like, well, if I'm depressed, but I take them and I get really manic really quickly, where other people just get like a little better or nothing happens, like, then there has to be genetics behind it,
Wow.
So I think the unreasonable people are the people who are trying to like pin down one thing when we have so many horrible environmental factors: stress, diet, social media, EMFs. I mean, I could go on. Yeah.
Right. I think you named some of the big four, though. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you'll have to look at each case individually. Again, this is a very holistic thing and a very individual thing. Like, your health and your recovery has to be both holistic and individual.
I love that.
Like, good.
No. So I shouldn't have said anything. I want you to keep talking. Oh. So there's this whole other piece, which is that some of the nutritional supplements or vitamins might not even do what you think because they either aren't the right form. I've learned about this. The B6 is not the right form. Or what was the other one you'd given me? Zinc picolinate, I think, as opposed to another one. And then also by the same sort of a similar vein, like some of these tests won't pick up on stuff, or they won't. They're checking the wrong output, or they don't pick up on the excess of this thing or something like that. It's just like they're not going to catch it.
Yeah. And there are workarounds for that. Just to intercede really quick. So like, and they know this, like, so they know that there's such a thing called functional vitamin deficiency, where your serum levels will be normal, but they can actually test some enzyme levels. And they do this with B12. So B12, they can do what's called a methylmalonic acid test. And when you're low in B12, you'll have higher amounts of this methylmalonic acid because B12 is needed to metabolize it. So that's a way they can distinguish between a vitamin a B12 deficiency or a functional B12 deficiency, where someone may need even more B12s. Than
no
other
one
people.
knows this stuff, Chris. I mean, there's people who are in the field who know it, but like anyone who's like, oh, I'm taking my supplement of B, whatever B12. Is it the right one? I'm doing my zinc. Like, you're not even gonna that's not even gonna be uptaken into your. I don't even know how to say this. Your cells aren't even gonna use it. Because it's the wrong format.
Use it. Yeah. I mean, that's true. Well, let's just stick on B12 as a form of B12. If they give an injections called adenosine cobalamin, I think that's the name of it.
Cobalamin, yeah.
And then, adenosine cobalamin, and then there's methylcobalamin. And those, like, some people can't turn the one into the other, and so you have a B12 deficiency, and they shoot them with the one that they can't metabolize, and nothing changes. And they say, "Well, it wasn't B12. We gave you B12." Like, and this is well known now, and they work around that. Yeah. Primary care physicians are horrible at this. And that's why you have to do your own homework, and you have to push them as much as you can.
I've put in a zinc test request at a GP one time, and he got upset. He's like, "No, you don't need that. I don't see why you need that. I'm not going to do it." And
it's so ridiculous. Isn't it?
I guess that's why we like LabCorp.
Yeah.
You got the money, they'll test you.
Oh yeah. They'll do it for sure. It's not too bad though. Not too expensive.
No, not too bad.
Yeah. They should try to get a ad for walk-in labs. for your podcast for this one.
There you go.
Just kidding.
Walk-in labs.
Yeah.
I don't know if you work with other people, if you even want to go that far, but at least what would you tell someone who's like seeing a potential whole new framework of what may be going on?
I would say the first thing is that if you don't feel well, you don't feel well. And by that, I mean, there'll be people that will say it's all in your head. So they'll prescribe it to depression, or they'll prescribe it to mood. Like, I think that's the biggest problem we're having is, like they keep talking about the rising mood disorders, right? Well, I see it in right, it's in health problems. And I think that's a different way to think about it. So if you feel depressed enough that you can't get out of bed, or if you feel so much anxiety that you need to crawl in a corner, like that's not in your head, that's your health.
That's your health.
Yeah. And so you have to start looking at your mood as an extension of your health. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of people's self-dialogue. So, and it was true with me, like, when I had anxiety, well, that thing was making me anxious. So I need to be away from that thing. And then, how small your world gets when you do that. It gets tiny. And that's what happened to my mother. My mother had OCD as well. And I can't do that. I can't do this. Move that. I don't want to see that. And she had to have a very particular world to live in to not feel anxiety. And it got smaller and smaller. And that's not a way to live. So, but again, yeah, the big change, I think the first thing is like your mood is your health. It's not your brain.
Mm-hmm.
It takes part in your brain, part of it, but even when you break up with someone, well, there's 2 points I want to go. So say you break up with someone and someone breaks up with you and you're sad. Well, your sadness is still caused by a biochemical reaction in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this biochemical reaction is purely environmental. And when that environment goes away and you get some distance from that person, you lose their attachment to them, your depression goes away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it takes time. Like we get addicted to people, and breaking up with a person is a ripping off of that addiction. And you have to say, well, okay, I have to be away from that person to not be addicted to them. But it's still a biochemical thing, but it's environmentally driven. Now, how you react to breakups could be genetic, like,
the holistic and individual.
Yeah. When I say holistically, like, why do I see a neurologist for my neurological pain and a psychiatrist for my mental pain when they're all the nervous system? And so when I started seeing it holistically, like I started associating my mental pain and physical pain, and that led me to genes that were overlapping in these areas. And so I could see how a single gene can cause both psychiatric issues and physical problems, such as heart palpitations or neurological problems are linked to anxiety through the same calcium ion channels. So that's how you can look at it holistically, like by not like, well, every time I seem to get sad, my ankle hurts. Or my ankle hurts. That's why, like a lot of times they'll say to people who have chronic back pain and depression, well, you're depressed because you have chronic back pain. But they know that inflammation drives depression as well.
Mm.
So is it caused by the back pain, or are they both co-arising together?
Yeah.
And that's for the person to work out, because it might not be, but
I think one takeaway for me too is in the general medicine journey and in the cases you're talking about, like, I think you start pushing into this stuff, some of these doors, and some of them will open for you, and there's like connections that can be made. And I think there's discoveries. And I would want for others I would give advice to be open to exploring some of these things and taking some re-empowering yourself to start to figure out what's going on. There's an extent of that. Because there's a lot of info out there. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't listen to experts, but it also means that, as we said, experts can be so far down their own narrow field that they can't see the connections between these things. And so that's up to you, who else is going to do it?
Yeah. And I think that's probably the hardest thing that people who have depression deal with. And I can understand that because I was in a period of deep depression myself, and how hard it is to motivate to do these things, because that's part of the disorder. So I mean, that's the other side where was kind of lucky that my manias are more prevalent than my depressions, and I really haven't had a only depressive episode in years. I tend to have just manic depressive or manic episodes. So for people who have depression, which I think are the majority of people, I think people in my case are more rare. And I'm saying that because of the genetics of it are more rare. Understanding that, trying to understand that the depression is something, I don't want to say overcome, but it's something you need help with to start working on yourself. Like if you're in such a state of depression that you can't do anything, it doesn't matter if you have to take medications to feel somewhat better.
A Kickstarter, a jump start.
Yeah, exactly. And then once you're feeling well, then you can, have the energy just to push. But the thing is when you feel well to push, that's when you have to do the work. And not just be like, well, okay, I feel better. Now I'm taking Prozac or Wellbutrin or whatever.
I'm cured. That's it. Or at least, that's the
I'll
final.
Feel better. Yeah. Let me go to work and that's it. And I was like, no, that's just when the work starts.
That's a good point.
Because it's so difficult. You need other people to help you with it. And that's the one thing about depression is most times people with depression want to be alone. And it's easier to be depressed alone. It's weird. Depression, the difference between depression, if I just interject this because it might help people, difference between depression and depressive phenotype and the manic phenotype to me are just so interesting, and how society looks at them. Depression is so overly romanticized in the media. You have the depressive writer that's so romantic. Oh, he's pensive and melancholy and so interesting, and people just want to get into that. It's like they want to be drawn into their hole. It's like a black hole that draws people in. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just think it's interesting. And where people with mania are feared. You look at anyone doing meth on the street, meth-induced mania, and people are scared of that person. They walk away from him. But someone's depressed, the person's just sitting there, they'll just walk right by them. They're not a threat. And I'm saying this too because I think mood issues are big signals of health issues. One of the primary symptoms of health issues, even cancer, Parkinson's. I'm a firm believer that depression is an early sign of possible Parkinson's or a risk factor for Parkinson's. And this is well known that depression early depression is linked to a higher risk for Parkinson's.
I see now what you were saying, that we are so much just looking at mood as the thing to address or treat, is the kind of where we're at. Oh, I'm so depressed, I need to be not depressed, but you're sort of flipping it and saying that's just the indicator of something else, that could well be physical, biological, whatever, and not in the way that we mean that you need this pill, but rather, nutrition, whatever.
Yes, exactly. Like, I think psychiatry should know its place.
Mm.
That they're there only to help people figure out what their health problem is. Instead of saying I'm depressed, say you're fatigued. That will change how your doctor treats you 180 degrees. Because now they're treating fatigue instead of depression, and they'll say, "Oh, well, let's test your B12," and they will literally
I'll be damned.
change. Yeah, and I've seen and heard that happen. Like, and in the other case, they'll say, "Well, you're depressed. Let's get you a psychiatrist," and then your whole journey is pretty much over. Then,
yeah, you're going down that road now.
Yeah. So I'll say I have too much energy, where people have too little energy. That doesn't do much with doctors for me, unfortunately, but
right,
because again, like since it's more rare, and they're like, too much energy. What? I want more energy, because everyone wants more energy. Like, why do you carry? Well, I can't sleep. I'm sleeping 3 hours a night. Like, So I'll say I have insomnia, and that can change things, But unfortunately, that didn't happen with me, because this all started in 1999, and before I knew all of this stuff. So, let my suffering be be something you don't have to go through by changing the wording when you go to the doctor. Because I'm still trying to figure out, like, how does someone who doesn't have all this genetic knowledge that I do, or even the biochemistry knowledge, where do they start? And that's a really hard question. I think you can do a lot without knowing the biochemistry, and actually a lot of, and it goes back to the self-awareness, like, and I think that is actually probably more important. Like, I use the biochemistry to explain the awareness of my body and what's going on in my body. Like, but do I need it? Like, it helps me, but maybe if I just knew, like, here's a good example. I knew from the past, before I had the CBS deficiency, that when I ate a lot of protein, I became more manic and had more insomnia. And so I didn't eat a lot of protein. And I think that's something that frankly saved my life, and ended up not giving me, like, having heart attacks like my brother and mother and other brother had. So that I did without genetics. That was just like, I watching myself, and okay, I correlate this with my insomnia. And well, look, it turned out genetically to be true for me. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want all of my scientific jargon to get in the way of the importance of self-awareness.
Good point.
To your environment, and thinking that you need to know all this stuff to do anything. And I mean, literally, like, if you go to a retreat that no one's using Wi-Fi, and maybe there's no cell towers nearby, and you feel better, maybe it's not the retreat that's doing it. Like, maybe it's your exposure to, your lack of exposure to Wi-Fi. So maybe try to find another place that doesn't have Wi-Fi, or cellular towers, or
you're eating really healthy food regularly, or you have other people around you to interact with, you have
community,
community,
big one, community. Yeah. Like, I mean, my genetics come from a very tribal culture, and I am totally without a tribe right now. And I know that's one thing that I suffer from. And I'm constantly reaching out to people who are not tribal people. And that's not to say, like, one's any better or any worse. It's just different, but they cannot handle me. And I understand that. Like, and I have to pull myself back from it, because I know I'm almost certain it's the oxytocin that I get is something that I need from people. And a lot of people don't have it for me, and that's fine. Like, and it's something I have to accept, because, again, the rarity of the genetics, yada, yada, yada. So,
well, and that's something you and I touch on too, is so many people are kind of genetic mutts, or combinations of
people's very different nutritional backgrounds and genetic backgrounds, that we're going to probably would be expected to get some of these, I don't want to say glitches, but our machines aren't, our blueprint.
Glitch is good.
Glitch is good, but our genetic blueprint isn't really wired to like metabolize these certain pathways, or it's better at these pathways than others. And now our nutrition doesn't like fit that. And so it's sort of thrown the system into a little bit of a haywire, So there's another benefit of knowing your background and checking your nutrition,
Yeah, that's a good example. I mean, a perfect example is the omega, the type of omega fatty acids I need in my diet. Like, so, I know my ancestors came from hunter-gatherers around the Baltic Sea, probably ate a lot of seafood.
Fish. Yeah.
Or at least ate a lot of meat. They were hunter-gatherers. Like, I'm pretty certain from the Sami population of Finland.
Mm-hmm.
And they ate a lot of meat. Now, meat is very high in what's called long-chain polyunsaturated fatty acids, while vegetables are very high in short-chain. Now, I have all these polymorphisms in these genes that break down the short-chain into long-chain. So I can't break down the fatty acids in seed oils to turn them into the long-chain ones that are like in seafood. So I need to get my polyunsaturated fatty acids from. So being a vegetarian, my cholesterol was through the roof and my HDL was down to like 30.
Whoa.
And they were always like, you're going to have a heart attack. You need to go on statins. Well, I stopped being a vegetarian. I started eating fish like crazy and also some meat. And that reversed my cholesterol. But unfortunately, the mutation I have, that caused a problem with anxiety and stuff after that.
Gotcha.
So my case was a little complicated, but like someone without my mutation, just knowing your fatty acid to saturate genetic profile, you might reverse your heart disease or dramatically lower your risk of heart disease.
And that's the difference. The difference between go on this statin versus adjust your diet because of your genetic ability to handle these inputs and outputs,
And what happened when I went back to my doctor and they saw my HDL went up to 55 and my LDL cholesterol lowered back under 300. They were like, and I told them that I did with diet and they're like, oh, I'm glad that worked for you. Almost like patronizingly, they didn't believe me
dismissive.
Or that I was doing some dismissive. I'm like, why are you not interested in how I found this out? Like,
I'm like
showing you, like, I look at my genetics, like everyone should know this. Like everyone should be getting it. Anyone with with high cholesterol should get this genetic test to see if they have these and then change their diet accordingly. Like you would save so many lives, get them all statins, like, which cause all other problems. So yeah, it's really depressing to me in a lot of ways, and I try to forget about it, and just help the people I know.
Small steps, man. That's the best people we can help is those we know.
Yep, that's it.
Yep. Well, I'll probably wrap up this convo, but I do want to acknowledge that Christian has recommended me to get several blood test panels, including things like iron and B6 and homocysteine. And I've got those results and Chris has seen them and we're going to have a conversation about what he sees. And I'll try to give sort of the background story of how I got to this point of working with you. It's another way of demonstrating kind of how this way of looking at things can start to have results and start to affect changes in life,
Yeah, definitely. I'm so into that. Come on, dude. I'll talk another 3 hours about it.
We could do it.
Let's start going Joe Rogan podcast links.
Just blow it up, baby.
Yeah. But yeah, anytime, of course. Yeah, it's gonna be a really good one, and I can't wait to get the rest of them done. So get the rest of your results. Yeah, the more people we can get talking about it. Because I'm still a skeptic of myself on all this. And that's the one thing I want to point out. If anyone wants to talk to me about this, I'm welcome to it.
Sneak preview, Christian called it definitely on one of these results here. So nice job, man.
Thanks. You're welcome.
All right, that's it on genetics for now. Again, be sure to check out the bonus episode where Christian shares more of his process of personal health discovery. And also, you can stay tuned for part 2 of this topic, where I'm going to go into some of what I found in my own genetics with Christian's help and how this affected me. I will post that on the YouTube channel and the website, but not as a dedicated podcast episode. Until then, stay safe, listen to your body, and I'll see you next time.